We'll get to know a little bit about David Lipper, who's from Montreal, living in Hollywood, and he's here for our benefit. Huge round of applause for David Lipper, please. So, you know, I thought that this is my Oprah moment. Where I roll out my colorful socks.
They're very nice socks.
Thanks, man. And I get to embarrass you in front of your family.
Okay.
Because David's family is
First of all, before we do anything, can I give a shout out to my mother who just turned 76 today? Mom, you want to stand up? Take it. Love you, Mom.
Happy birthday, Mom. So, David, your family's in the crowd. Is this the first time that you have this kind of an audience, this kind of a chat with your parents in the crowd?
Unfortunately, they've had to endure many of these over the years.
So yeah, we'll try to make this one a little different. And a couple things about David. And I've been following you on all social media for a very long time. We know that you're born in Montreal. We know that you wanted to be an actor. You've been in 50 movies. You've been in my favorite childhood series, Full House. So I want to hear about DJ, and I want to hear about the Olsen twins. And I know Panos is dying to ask you questions about John Stamos, his main man, and the Oikos
Great
commercials.
power.
We'll get into the Oikos commercials a little later. So as I dropped real estate investment, franchising, you also own a gym in Montreal, and you do all of this from LA. So first of all, let's get into this. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I think I wanted to be a singer when I started. And then that went through musical theater into finally acting.
So how do you, when you decide to do that, where do you go? How do you become an actor in Montreal? What do you do to make it happen?
Very hard to become an actor in Montreal. I started in musical theater, and it just seemed like the best thing I could do. You know, I have a very talented family. I have a sister who's an amazing athlete. I have a brother who's incredibly smart and gifted intellectually. And I had to find the thing that I could do that I was best at. And this was just the thing that came easiest. You know, memorizing lines and getting on stage and letting it out was just a natural state for me.
How were you as a student? Were you the class clown? Did you get kicked out of class like me? Did you cause problems? What was your...
I was a really good boy. I never skipped a day of school. Not one day.
So tell us what you studied and what happens next.
So I got a BFA in musical theater, and then literally 2 months after I graduated, I picked up and I moved to LA in July of '91.
Okay, so you pick up by yourself?
Yep.
And you go.
I knew one guy, he was a casting director. I had a relative there who I slept on his couch. And this guy got me one audition. It was for a show called Step by Step with Suzanne Summers and Patrick Duffy. And I went all the way to the network. I beat out about 300 actors to get to the final two. And I didn't get it, but what I did get was an agent and recognition and people who said, who's this kid who just got off a plane from Canada? And so I got lucky, you know, I had luck to get that one opportunity, and I seized it. And if I hadn't done that, if I slept on the job, if I hadn't given everything for that one audition that I got, I wouldn't be here talking about it today.
So identifying that one moment, and you know, we have people in the crowd that I've kind of learned a lot of things from. You know, Jonathan Ginter interviews a lot of entrepreneurs, and people have one opportunity sometimes. You know, whether it's Eminem 8 Mile style, when you have this one opportunity, or whether it's, you know, in business. How do you recognize, and we'll talk about the opportunities that you've recognized over the years, but how do you make that plunge? How do you find the chutzpah? We talked about chutzpah a lot the last couple of weeks. How do you find the chutzpah to just get up and leave? First of all, did your parents even support you?
I mean, my parents have always been supportive, God bless them. And I think they were more of the feeling like, oh, give it a year, see what happens if it doesn't work out. come home. And I tell you the truth, I didn't want to struggle. I didn't want to be a starving actor. I said if it wasn't going to work after a year, I was going to happily go get an MBA and make a shift. And because business has always been in our family blood. My father's a businessman, my brother's a businessman, and it's in the DNA. But you know, by the end of that first year, I started making a really good living as an actor. I booked a couple of big commercials, and then I booked this big movie of the week, and that was it. It just took off from there.
So, you know, when we had our, we were able to touch base yesterday, and you had mentioned that you had to come back to Canada at a certain point. Yeah, they want to hear you a little more. You actually came back to Canada to be in a series. Tell us about, you know, going to LA and then having to come back to Canada for a series. How did you identify in the Canadian market? How different are those markets for you as an actor?
Well, the first show I ever did was a show here called Time of Your Life. It was a teenage soap opera. It was on every day, 5 days a week at 4 o'clock. And that, what I did was, I had done my freshman year of college, and I booked it in the summer, and I took off my fall semester. And by the end of that fall semester, and by the way, my brother was a writer on that show, funny enough, who's now a senior VP at NASDAQ, how the world changes. And then I knew the show wasn't going to come back, and I decided, actually caused a real ruckus. I caught all the actors to go on strike because I thought we were underpaid. So the CTV came out, and it was a whole fiasco where you
came back to Canada and you stir shit up.
I stirred a lot of trouble up. And a lot of the actors caved really quickly when the producer offered a little bit more money, and I was the only one who held my ground and said, you know, you're supposed to double our salaries at this point. And I wanted to go back to school and graduate, and I wasn't done learning. So I left the show, and I went and got graduated on time.
Tell us about the entrepreneurial side of acting. You know, a lot of people think it's just rehearsing lines, just looking good. Tell us about the business sense.
So there's two sides to acting, okay? So first off, there's technique, all right? So as an actor, what I teach, I coach several actors who are doing very well right now, like Barb Pally, who's on NCIS, has been studying with me for the last few years. I've got the kid who's now going to be the new lead in Unbroken. I don't know if you guys saw that movie with Angelina Jolie, which she directed with the guy who was a POW in Japan. So now they're making a sequel, and a guy who's been working with me just got the lead role. I teach them that the first thing you have to go after as an actor is an emotional need, an objective. And people confuse objective with a plot-driven thing, like I need to get from point A to point B. But as human beings, it's always relationship-based. So I always teach it's an emotional need, and it usually falls into one of two categories. It's either love or power. So as an actor, I'm always going after that need that I need to fulfill me. I have to figure out what that is in my life, and I go after that with what's written on the page. As an entrepreneur, I think we have that same drive. You know, I have a need to bring something to the table, whether it's frozen yogurt, which is something I've done, or a gym. It's the feeling that I have something unique, I have a story to tell, and this is my medium of telling it. Because honest to God, if we want to make money, there are easier ways to make money. I mean, we can go get a job, we can go get a 9-to-5, and we can get paid, and we don't have to deal with all the tourists. I just broke out some Yiddish. But I think entrepreneurs are a special kind of spirit where we have a certain amount of fear that we overcome in saying, I believe in this, so much so that I'm going to fight through the obstacles of fear, anxiety, insecurity, anything that blocks us from climbing that mountain with that objective at the top. That's what we fight through. So anyone who's an entrepreneur, I have the utmost respect for. It's the hardest thing in the world, and it's the most rewarding thing in the world when it works. The key is to recognize when you are too full of drive, that you're not seeing the signs that say it's time to go home, and when the fear is just fear getting in your way that you need to fight through the obstacle. That's the trick, and that's the hardest part.
I love that analogy, and you talked about identifying trends or identifying things in yourself and knowing when to stop. Did you ever have that feeling, and did you stop? Did you listen to yourself?
Yeah, I had to make that call with Menchies. And I learned a lot about the franchise business. I opened 5 frozen yogurt shops in the span of a few years. And my feeling was that in order to hit the average, which when I got into Menchies, they told me was $750,000 a store. Now I'm guessing it's somewhere around $350,000 a store. But when I came in, I wanted to hit that average, and I said the best way I can hit that is by giving myself enough opportunity in enough locations that I should hit that average. So the good stores will outweigh the bad stores, and I'll hit that, and if I can hit that average, I'll make some really good money. And the second thing was, I wasn't planning on getting into the frozen yogurt business as a worker. I was planning on putting a fund together and overseeing that fund and working with an area manager who would have managed, and we would have had the capital to support that. And so what I learned very quickly is the franchise model is not built for that. The franchise model, I believe, is built for families, especially immigrant families, that are looking to buy themselves a career, that are going to work the store. And the biggest illusion in the franchise models is the labor number. And what you have to do is you have to look at the store and you have to say to yourself, well, how many people do I think I need to run a store? And if you look at a frozen yogurt shop, it's quite clear you need at least 2 people working 12 hours a day, 365 days a year. And had I put that together and taken out a calculator, I would have seen there's no way to get the labor down from $130,000. But I was seeing people with $1 million stores telling me their labor was at 10%, that their labor was at $100,000. What should have popped up is a red flag, saying, how do you have labor at $100,000 on a store? If you're doing $1 million, you should be probably hiring double the 2 people you need in a $500,000 store. So you're probably looking at 4 people. You're probably looking at $260,000 a year in labor at $15 an hour. But why is that number not showing on their numbers? Why are they saying I'm at 10% labor at $100,000 on $1 million? And the reason is dad is working the store, mom is working the store, the son is working the store, the daughter is working the store when they come off school and whatever it is. I know this because I've lived it, and I've gone to the stores and I've seen now the ones who are making it work, like the people who bought my stores, have the whole family working the store. And guess what? It's not on the labor column. So the labor's showing 10%, but that's because you've got 4 people working for free who are contributing by taking whatever's left at the end as their salaries. So that's what you have to understand about the franchise model. And when you put the percentages together, you start at cost of goods at 30%. If you're spending $100,000 on rent, that's all fine and dandy when you have $1 million store, but when you have a $500,000 store, which, by the way, I never hit. $460 was the best I ever did at a store. You have a $500,000 store, you're now at 20% labor, 30% cost of goods, 20% rent, and labor at $200,000, we're now at 40% on a $500,000 store. So what's left? And then the franchise is going to take 8 to 10% of your money off the top. So you don't have the luxury of having a range in those percentages when you're in the franchise business. You have to be to the dollar. You have to be exact. There is no room for error. And this model, in my opinion, does not work unless you and your family are working the store.
That was a mini MBA for me. And I'm starting to rethink a lot of my clients' business models in the last 5 minutes. But
unless, of course, you have that $1 million store that's selling $1 million in yogurt, and let me tell you something, that's a lot of yogurt.
So what I understood is that you wanted to scale. You wanted to have that critical mass, and you wanted to put a district manager. And you said that as an immigrant, you're buying yourself a job, or as anyone. So you, as a Canadian immigrant, immigrating to the U.S., you were working the cash.
Right. So
Your dream of a district manager wasn't.
So what happened is, first off, I opened 2 stores in LA. And my manager had a nervous breakdown. She couldn't keep track of things. Next thing you know, I'm driving to the store because she's running out of yogurt. I'm going to stores. I'm begging them for boxes of yogurt, cups that she's run out of. I'm grabbing waffle mix and literally driving around the LA metropolitan area, grabbing things that she can't manage to order properly. And this is, within the first 3 months. So she had a breakdown. She had to leave. And then I'm left with the store. So I worked that store for 6 months straight. I went there every day, and I'm an actor. This is not what I do. And I've done it all. I've scrubbed the toilets, I've scrubbed the floors, I've cleaned the machines, I've mixed the yogurts, I've done cash, I've done the deposits, I've kept the books. Everything I've never wanted to do in my life, I did. And I learned a lot. First off, I learned a lot about what these kids go through in a day. And I tell you, the kids I had in LA were the best, most impressive workers. These mostly Mexican Americans that I had. I was a Mexican community, my first store in Downey, heavily Mexican. And these kids worked for $8.50 an hour. And they never complained. And they showed up, and they never stole $1 from the till, and the till was never off more than $5. Cut to Montreal, which I'm sorry to tell you, we had registers that were off $100. The manager would call me crying, I don't know what to do, the register's off $100. How can it be off $100? We were robbed 3 times.
In Montreal?
In Montreal, once at gunpoint, once they smashed the window, they tried to rip out the safe, they did rip out the safe. One of my employees got pistol whipped in the head with a gun. By
in
the
a
way,
frozen yogurt.
Frozen yogurt. That's in Dollard, and
We'll change that.
And in LA, in a heavily Mexican area, nothing ever happened like this. So Montreal, also what I went through, I had an employee who kept asking for more hours and more hours and more hours. Please, I have something coming up. Will you give me more hours for this first month that you work for me? I said, okay, sure. Then she said, I'm going on maternity leave. And the maternity leave has to be paid, computed by her average hours, and that's why she tried to max out her hours. And I said, how could you, maternity leave, you've been here a month. And she said, oh, I didn't know. Didn't know I was 6 months pregnant.
So you enjoyed your business experience in Montreal. It was
Right.
a positive one, is what you're saying.
I mean, I had a kid who was 16 who changed his time cards, who stole the money from the safe and then ripped out the hard drive from the cameras. And I called the police and I said, I got him, I know it's him. And they came in and they fingerprinted and they said, you're absolutely right, we know it's him. And I'm like, great, when do I get the money back? They're like, oh, you'll never see that money back. I'm like, well, when does he go to jail? He doesn't go to jail. So what happens? Well, we talked to his parents and we told them he did a very bad thing.
Tell us about your experience with opening a store in Laval, Quebec.
Oh, God.
Not Laval, California.
So we were supposed to open in March.
Of what year?
2013. And we opened at the end of August. The mayor had just been indicted for fraud. I came in with the plans, and I didn't hear back for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I'm calling them every day. I'm like, we need to build, we need a permit, what's happening? Oh, we're on vacation. You need to talk to this guy's not coming. And by the way, it had to be in French. And
How was your French, by the way? Because we're about to switch.
My French is not that good, but I got by. And then finally, I got somebody on the phone a month later, and they said, yes, we have your plans. We can't give you a permit. Why not? The plans came rolled up. Well, yes, that's how they come. They roll them up and they stick them in a tube, and we don't take them like that in Laval. I said, well, how do you take them? They said they have to be taken out and folded and then handed to us. So I said, are you good? This is like a joke, right? She said, no. So I had to hire someone to go down there, because I'm in LA, take the plans out of the cardboard tube, fold them, hand them back. 2 more weeks go by. Yes, we have the plans. No, you can't have a permit. What's the problem? Well, they're stamped by a Quebec architect. Yes, that's what I was told I have to do. Yes, but there's not enough French, and they really should be redone completely by the Quebec architect. So you need to hire a Quebec architect, redo the plans completely, send them back to us. I lost another 3 weeks, and so on and so on. Finally got a permit, and finally they start building, and then the contractor calls me, and he says, Dave. I said, yeah, what's going on, Jeff? He says, everybody's walking off the job. And I said, why? What's going on? Construction holiday.
You don't have that in LA? There's no construction holiday?
You guys have 4 months of the year where you have good weather, and in the middle of the summer you got a construction holiday? So
that's only in Laval, by the way, construction holiday.
There went July, and now we're into August, and there goes my summer, and I opened up right after the whole good season was already gone. And so we opened up behind the 8 ball, and we were fighting ever since, and it was really, really tough that first year. It was a lot of me writing checks, fixing cash flow that was negative, because you need that summer money in a seasonal business, which, by the way, don't get into a seasonal business. Don't do it. Do not get into a seasonal business, period. This was supposed to be season proof, according to the numbers I saw from Toronto, because the Menchies in Toronto were doing better in the winter than the Menchies in LA. That's why these guys convinced me to come open up here. I'd like to say I did it because I have family here and I have friends and I wanted to bring Menchies, and I did. But they told me, the experts at the franchise, this is the place to go. Again, sometimes we have to step outside the excitement of it all and say, does it really make sense that in the city of Laval, when it's minus 20, that someone's going to go and say, let's get a frozen yogurt?
That didn't happen.
Did not happen. We had days in the winter where our sales were zero. I mean, zero. You know, in LA, the worst we ever saw was a $500 day. That's the worst day when it rained or something.
So, David, you're living a fun life in LA. You're hanging out with Bob Saget,
right?
Dave Cloutier, the Olsen twins, Stamos, obviously, and you're dating DJ
on TV.
On TV.
She's happily married to Valerie Bourret, another good friend. He's a hockey player.
What is it inside of you? Is it just because you have the DNA of an entrepreneur that you just say, I need more, I need to hedge?
You know,
there's something that I need to express that led you to clean toilets and serve ice cream. What was it that made you go outside of a very comfortable and exciting realm to do that?
It's an excellent question, by the way. And in hindsight, had I not ventured into this, I could have saved myself a lot of grief. But I want to tell you something. What I teach my actors is when you're climbing that mountain to your objective, one of the most important things we forget are the obstacles. You know, when we see the movie K2 and we see a guy with a broken leg climbing that mountain because he's got to get to that top, it is so much more exciting. It is such a bigger experience of a journey that he's gone on. If I haven't gone through the pain and suffering of what I've been through, and there was a lot of pain and there was a lot of suffering, I would not be sitting here today as I am. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. I'm a better actor today, I'm a better businessman today, and I'm a better human being today because of what I've went through. I have an enormous amount of gratitude and respect for people in business that I probably would not have had things come so easily. And I wouldn't understand the fundamentals of this business had I not been forced into it. So all of that are the beauty of the obstacles that we fight through in life. They make us better people, they make us stronger people, and best of all, they make us more grateful for what we have. Having said all that, one of the main reasons I got into Menchies is because I just gone through the crash of '08. I've been really successful with real estate and stocks and bonds. They'd served me well my whole life. I got very lucky. I was sitting where we make our own luck, but I got very lucky. I sat on a plane next to some guy who was flying from LA to Montreal and for the Jewish holidays. And he had a stack of papers, and I started talking to him. I said, what do you got there? And he said, it's a business plan. I want to start buying apartment buildings in LA. And I said, do you mind if I take a look at that? And this is the beauty, by the way, guys, of just talking to people. This is probably a guy people would not have looked at twice. He was nerdy, he had the glasses, he was dropping papers. The other person in our row didn't want to even be sitting next to him. But I started talking to the guy and found out he was a Harvard MBA. So I'm already a little interested. And I like the idea of buying real estate in LA. This is 1995. I had just started on a show called Full House, and I had some disposable income. And cut to, I've bought 10 buildings with this guy, and I've made more money in this real estate than everything else I've done in my life combined. And thank God for those apartment buildings. And thank God I struck up a conversation with this guy sitting next to me on the plane and didn't do what the other person in the row did, which was this. And I said, hi, I'm David. It's amazing how much you can get by just saying, hi, I'm David. So that was the best of it. And then my portfolio that I had grown myself in stocks and bonds had absolutely killed it up until 2008. Then this crash happened. And from September of 2008 until March of 2009, I woke up every day and saw that I was $20,000 poor. And wake up the next day and I'm $20,000 poor. And I wake up the next day and I'm $20,000 poor. And I want to throw up and I want to jump off a bridge and I don't know what to do. And this is the first time in my life that I felt powerless. And I felt like I don't know what to do. I don't know how to stop it. I feel like I can't sell now because if I sell now, I'm one of the idiots who's panicked and run. My guy's telling me to buy. I don't know what to do. And it was the most awful feeling. I'm not used to failure. So for me, this was a new place to be. And I got this idea. I need disposable income. I need a cash business that's recession-proof. And lo and behold, Menchies frozen yogurt had $1 million stores during this recession.
In Laval.
In Hollywood, not in Hollywood, in the Valley, on Ventura Boulevard, in Santa Monica. And I went, and by the way, I didn't just get into this. I don't do that. I went at noon. I went at 4 o'clock. I went at 6 o'clock. I went at 9 o'clock. I counted people. I talked to the managers. I talked to the owners. Then I said, I don't believe the numbers. And they printed it up off the computer, and they said, here you go. We did $1 million last year. I said, this is the most unbelievable business. And these people, like I said, I'm good at talking to people. Just like the guy in the plane, I talked to these people, and these owners opened the doors to me. They showed me their numbers. They showed me the returns, and the numbers were huge. And I said, I'm an actor. I'll get TMZ to come to my store opening. I'll get the cast of Full House to come make an appearance. By the way, did all those things and never passed 460,000 in sales because I just didn't have the right location at the right time of a fad that took off really quickly and crashed even quicker.
So I want to pivot because it wasn't all bad. Because as we were talking, I realized that you are probably, or you probably played a very significant role in shifting the political landscape in Quebec. And I want to talk about that because
Spoongate.
You are responsible, before the past the gate, before the inflated gate. Whatever Brady did.
Yeah.
Before there was a Spoongate. There was a spoon that changed politics in Quebec. Tell us about Spoongate and its effects on our lives.
One of the other benefits of having gone through this experience with Menchies is I had an offer to go to Romania and teach an acting workshop for 3 months that I never would have accepted. I would never have said, oh yeah, I'll go to Romania for 3 months and teach Romanian actors. But I was so burnt and I so needed to get the hell out of North America and not deal with these stores every day. I couldn't deal with it anymore. I told you, I'm a guy who grew up not really experiencing defeat, not experiencing failures. And all of a sudden, I'd just gone through the crash, And now I'd gone through my first business failure. Because I'd invested in several businesses over the years that had made a lot of money. So I needed to get the hell out of here. And I went to Romania, and I had the best experience of my life. And I taught these actors, and all of a sudden I started booking movies. And I shot 8 movies in Romania, including one with Nicolas Cage that Paul Schrader wrote and directed, who's the guy who wrote Raging Bull and Taxi Driver, one of my all-time idols. I got to work with this guy. So all this happened because of the hardship that I went through. Now, while I'm in Romania, I get a phone call. It's my manager from the Discount store, the one in Brossard. And she says, I had 3 stores, one in Dollard, one in Discount in Brossard, and one in Laval. And she says, they came in, and they took the spoons. I said, hold on. Who came in? Who took the spoons? What are you talking about? The language police. What language police? There's a language police. And they came in, and they took the spoons. What do they want with the spoons? They said they're illegal. What do you mean they're illegal?
You think you're on acid at
They're
this point.
spoons. What are you talking about? She said they're illegal spoons. They took them all. What do I do? I said, okay, first off, there's a Walmart a block away. Go to the Walmart. Go buy 1,000 white spoons. And then did they leave a card? Yes, here's the card. Here's the woman. You need to call her. And before I know it, I'm on CBC, I'm on CTV, the Huffington Post is calling me, and they're calling it Spoongate. And what happened was we had a spoon with a cow on the top, and engraved in the stem of the spoon it said Moolicious. I swear to God. Google this. This is true. I think there was another spoon that had the Menchie on the top, and that said, what's your mix, which is a trademark. By the way, this is engraved in the plastic mold of these plastic spoons. So I don't know what's going on. I'm dealing with this guy now. I'm dealing with the regional manager. They've opened up this case. This is going on and on. I'm doing interviews, and this woman named Marwa, who was your premiere here, I think this actually killed her. And what's interesting is she called an early election, and soon after Spoongate, I think people turned. And I think that this is one of the factors that led to the change in the people going, we've had enough of this, we're going to vote for the Liberals. And of course, she lost the election. So I think a combination of Pastagate and then Spoongate, I can't believe we're talking about this, Spoongate, possibly led to the end of the PQ. Now for me, imagine I'm in Romania, I'm 7 hours ahead, and I'm trying to shoot my movies, and I'm doing Skype with the CBC, and trying to figure out what's going on. So this is doing business in Quebec. I don't recommend retail business to anybody in Quebec. It's not easy, but I do recommend. I'll tell you what business I do like. Being the franchisor, you want to come up with the concept. You want to go rape your franchisees for 10% of everything they make or 8% of everything they make, regardless if they're having a good year or they're losing their butts. Go into that business.
Let's talk about that business. Without and I hope leaving the your slogan aside. Studio X.
I'm going to do something to make it easier to look at you.
Thank you.
This is the whole problem. It's a good thing I'm in the business. All right.
Good reflex.
Studio X.
Let's talk about Studio X. I walk into the studio, and I've been there. Walk into the studio.
So
I strap my body to it, and electrical pulses run through my entire body for resistance.
So let's go back to Romania. In Romania, I had the good fortune of learning what EMS is. EMS is electrical muscle stimulation. And they gave me this whole spiel about how in 20 minutes you'll get the benefits of 2 hours in the gym. And I thought it was snake oil, and I didn't believe it until I did it.
So what is it? Tell people what it is.
Well, basically, Bruce Lee started experimenting with this stuff, and I think in the 40s. In fact, if you go, again, here's the thing, guys. You can always Google it. Just Google it and see if the stuff is for real or not. So you'll see some video of Bruce Lee on YouTube messing around with EMS technology. And what it is it sends an electrical muscle pulse to the muscle and causes a contraction. So think about it as the brain will send an electrical impulse to the muscle and cause a contraction, right? My brain just told this to do this through the nerve system. So this is doing it through technology and contracting hard and deep. And that's the basic science behind EMS. So there's a company that got the rights to X-Body, which was the leader in Europe. I tried it in Romania, and I bought a machine, and I opened what's called a micro gym here called Studio X. And here's what I like about it. No cost of goods. 30% cost of goods that we had to do to Menchies. And by the way, if you're not running your store, if you're not the family watching the store, a lot of that product is going out the back door. Your staff is eating it. The people are coming and sampling and sampling and sampling and sampling. I was on the cameras one day. I used to watch the show, watch like a show. I was watching the store. And I saw a family of 5 come in. And they sampled and they grabbed toppings and they went and they did it again.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, actually. That was, my kids got carried away.
Jamie's family
I'm
came
sorry,
in.
that was uncalled
And
for.
that's your cost of goods jumping from 20% to 30 to 35 to 40. Every cup that gets thrown out, every little scrap that's wasted is coming out of your bottom line. And if you don't have somebody that's really watching the store, that stuff is going out the back door.
David, are you now the franchisor?
I am now the franchisor of Studio X, in that I have an interesting setup right now. So I'm not the franchisor in the sense that I don't own the distribution rights to the X-Body machine, but I do own the distribution rights to a new machine. That's better technology, and will be rolled out at some point. And that's where the money is. The money is in dealing with businesses. The money is in dealing with orders for $100,000 or $500,000 or $1 million and not trying to sell one guy an $8 cup of yogurt. That, in my opinion, is a really tough business. You know, look, there are people who've done very well with Dunkin' Donuts. That's a franchise. There are people who've done well with Menchies. I know some of them. You've got to get really, really lucky, and there's no room for error. But the people who created Menchies, who I also know very well, is a husband and wife team that had an MBA project, and they saw a store in Orange County that had the self-serve frozen yogurt, and they said, oh, we're going to do this for our MBA thesis. And they did $1 million their first year on a street called Laurel Canyon in Studio City in LA. And then from there, they've now got 1,000 stores. And they're getting 8% of all 1,000 stores, no matter what they bring in. If you're dying and you can't pay the rent and you can't pay the bills, they're still pulling that money out of your bank account. So being as a franchisor is a really good business. Being the franchisee is really tough. Even if you're a guy like me who played the averages and said, I'll open 5. You got to be really, really careful with this stuff, guys. And you got to do the math. They're giving you percentages. Take those percentages and take your calculator and see if they're adding up. And the biggest area I'm warning you to look at is labor. So now get to Studio X, and this is an easy, manageable business for me, and I'm making none of the same mistakes. I'm taking a rent of $500 a month for a little micro gym space. I have no cost of goods. I have no stuff going out of a back door. I have simply a labor-intensive business that has a built-in model. And so for me, it's a business that I like. Now, I haven't grown it as big as I'd like to. It hasn't hit the numbers I'd like to see it hit. But I understand all the pitfalls from Menchies that I don't see in this business, and that's why I like it.
David, a lot of people get emotionally carried away in a business.
Yeah.
They think that the change is right around the corner. You know, if I just hang in one more season, if I implement one more service, if I sell one more ice cream, it's going to be different. When do you throw in the towel and say, I'm done?
That is such a great question, guys. I want to get the mic up for this. That is perhaps the most important question that he just asked.
Well, there were other good ones. I mean,
there's a lot of good ones. But when do you throw in the towel? And I liken this to a relationship. If any of you have been in a dysfunctional relationship with a partner you shouldn't be with, but you love her. God, did I love her. And God, did I want to make it work, even though I knew it could not work. That's a really dangerous place to be. We have no place for emotion in business. We have place for passion. On the sales side, take all that love and emotion and put it into the passion for sales. But when you need to look at your business and say, do I stick with this or do I go? You've got to take the emotion out of it. Take out, I slaved behind that cash for a year. Take out, I spent a year building the store, and I built these stores. You know what I went through? I mean, I told you what I went through in Laval. I went through this with 5 stores. There were always problems. There were always problems building a store. You have to let it go. And think of it like this. You have to give yourself the opportunity for a perspective shift. If you're in battle, just like when you're in the heat of a relationship, for any of us who've been in some tough relationships, when you're in the battle and bullets are flying, you're dodging bullets and you're firing. You're dodging bullets and you're firing. You can't see the war. You don't have a bird's eye view to see how the tanks are rolling over here and the trucks are coming in here and the planes are coming in here. You're dodging bullets and you're firing. You have to give yourself an opportunity to change your perspective and get up here and take a look and say, take the emotion out. Let me look at the 5 stores. Let me look at this business. Can I make this business work? That's what I did. And I said, the guy who doesn't fail, the guy with a big giant ego, because I'm a big stupid actor from Hollywood, the guy who thinks I can do it better than anybody else, I said, I can't do it. I can't make this work. I see the whole thing, and it doesn't work for me. And I sold my 3 stores in Canada to 3 Chinese families. And I think they're making it work. Because the father's working, the wife is working, the 3 daughters, they have language issues, they couldn't go get jobs. It's the right place for them. It's not the right place for me. And that is probably the hardest thing to do, just like getting out of that relationship where God, I love her. God, if she could just not be so crazy, I could make this work. And you know what, guys? Acceptance is the answer to my problem when this is the problem. And that's the hardest thing to do, but you've got to let go and you've got to accept the realities and move on.
When those are crazy stories, and when is it enough? Will there be another venture? Like when is David Lipper going to be satisfied with what he has? Is it something that's inside of you that there's an insatiable appetite to always be developing and building and experimenting?
I think of it like this. The universe's natural state is to expand and contract. The universe is always expanding and contract. I believe us as human beings, our natural state is to expand, create. Expand, create. Expand, create. That's our natural state in this world. That's my natural state. And if you're an entrepreneur and you're in this room today, I think you're someone like me who believes in your ability to expand and create. If I stop expanding and creating, I feel like then I'm just going to die. That's what it's like for me. For me, it's not really a choice. It's just who I am. I'm not really good. You know, it's funny. I went to Cabo, and this guy tried to sell me a timeshare. Has this ever happened to you guys? Come to the free breakfast, and yeah. And this guy is trying to sell me on this timeshare, and he says, look, you get 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, 2 weeks here. And I said, I've never taken a 2-week vacation in my life, nor do I ever plan on it. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I just can't do it. I can't sit at a beach for 2 weeks. I just can't. It's not in my DNA. I'm great at that for a long weekend. I love that. Give me 3 to 5 days. More than that, I'll go nuts. I've got to keep finding the next thing. You know, there's that
Did you
book.
buy the timeshare?
I did not buy the timeshare.
Because me and Panos would love to go.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So if you're like me, you know, sitting around, you know, what do they say? A body at rest stays at rest. A body in motion is in motion. For me, I've got to keep moving. Otherwise, it just all stops. And I don't want it to stop. I love this ride. I've been through a lot. I've been through a lot of pain. I've lost a lot of money, you know, through this experience. And I wouldn't trade 1 second of it for anything. I love my life. I love what I do. I love trying new things, whether I fall on my face or I get to the top of the mountain.
Let's go back to TMZ. Let's talk about.
That was the perfect conclusion.
No. I gotta go back.
Like
I gotta go back. I gotta go back because people are gonna get mad at me, and we'll do that conclusion again. That was just a rehearsal.
I can repeat it. I'm an actor.
But that was dramatic. Tell us about your favorite actor that you worked with, and the most terrible person to work with in Hollywood.
I don't really like to talk about the.
No one. I mean, we don't like. There's like a Chinese wall between Canada and the U.S. We have different Googles, different social media. No one will ever know if we tweet.
I'll tell you that I did do a TV movie in Toronto, actually, that I was one of the stars of, and the actress was a bit of a diva, and she looked at the buttons on my shirt and she said, shouldn't have that many undone. She did it up, and the wardrobe lady came over. And she said, please don't touch his wardrobe. We have continuity. It has to match the same amount of buttons that we had in the last shot. She said, well, you did it wrong. And I said to her, I said, you can't talk to people like this. These people are working 14 hours a day for us. And I got the wrath of this actress for the next 2 weeks. She's like, I'm going to bury you. I'm going to ruin you. And then just was the most impossible person to work with. Because I stood up for a wardrobe lady. But again, I wouldn't change that.
You're not going to name her. Was it Scarlett Johansson?
I'm not going to name her.
Who was that?
I'm not going to name her. Sarah. The best experience, Kevin Farley. I shot a series here called Misguided Angels, and we shot 26 episodes for Fox. It was a story about myself and Kevin Farley, who were these 2 idiot angels that were sent back to Earth to rear our wings. And we ran a motel, and where people checked in every week with a problem, and we were supposed to fix it. But because we were such idiots, we made it worse. And then somehow in the end, it would work out. And Kevin is an amazing guy. One of my best friends to this day. He's the brother of Chris Farley, who died, unfortunately. He was a great comedic talent. And that was probably one of the best times in my life. The good days before I had struggled. But we had a lot of fun, and we shot that in Montreal. What a joy to be able to come back to Montreal to shoot a TV series. That was the first coming home for me. And maybe that was one of the reasons I wanted to open a business here. I love Montreal. You know, I wanted to have something that made me come back here. I just didn't realize how difficult it is to do business here.
Surprise.
This is not an easy place to do business. It is a lot easier to do business in LA. I'll just tell you, as having done Menchies here and Menchies in LA, everything from distribution costs to logistics, everything was easier on the LA side. I'm sorry to say that, you know, because we're all here. But you have a lot of red tape to get through, not just in Laval when the mayor's indicted. You have a lot of red tape to get into, and a lot of extra fees to deal with. And life is hard here. And I'm seeing that. I know that. You know, and for small business owners, you're dealing with a high minimum wage. I paid $8.50 an hour to make a store work in LA, while I was paying $12 an hour here. And that's really tough. That's really, really tough. And my heart and my hat goes out to all of you small business owners that deal with this. You know, and I get it. People should earn a living wage. I get it. But that's really hard to sympathize when you can't make rent and you have a small business.
And that was a great conclusion. Everybody.